All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Speakeasy Project. I'm Jeremy. It is good to see everybody this morning. Go ahead and drop some comments. Let me know that you're here. Moose already did the his normal text, so I know he's hanging around this morning, working in the shop. So I love that. But it is good to see everybody this morning. Hope that everybody has had a good week. I text briefly with Rick this morning, and he was saying, it was a crazy week. Glad it's Sunday. I I echo that for sure. You ever just get like a random corner of your shirt accidentally tucked in somehow, and it's like felt hung. But yeah, it was certainly a good week. But I am glad to be here at the weekend for sure. Morning and morning. Oh, Jeffrey, what's up, buddy? Well, we're glad you're here. For sure. It is good to see everybody. I am super glad that we're getting to spend this time together today. Oh my gosh. I assume you mean at the same time. Your phone and your elbow? Is this like a car accident or? That sounds pretty wild. Jeez. Your phone and your elbow. That's like, it's literally like the two worst things that could break. Besides maybe your neck, I mean, elbow. That's awful. A week. That stinks, but at least it wasn't like, months. I know some people are like in casts for 2 or 3 months at a time. you know, it's awful. So I'm glad it was a short amount of time, and I hope that everything is functional and good. Even better. Now the real question is: are you an iPhone user or an Android user? I feel like that's the real question that people have to talk about. I feel like I'm running into more and more Android users these days, and I don't know if that's just, you know, obviously they make a really great product as well, but I feel like that market is kind of growing a little bit. Kind of interesting. We're going to be in Luke chapter 12, by the way, today. Um, we're going to be looking at verses 22, kind of working toward the end of the, well, not really the end of the chapter, but kind of through 28, 22 through 28. Yeah, he's back here. He's hanging out. I kind of talked about that. I know you've been out for a little bit. My kids and my wife did this puzzle for me, and so um, and they did another puzzle too. So I've kind of rearranged some of my decor in here to feature the puzzle work, as it were. That's a very Captain Jack phrase, right? As it were. Um, yeah, Luke chapter 12, 22 through 28. Um, Actually, really excited about teaching this passage and just some things that I kind of have found in this that I feel like are really relevant in our day to day, for sure. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read this passage for us. Luke chapter 12, verses 22 through 28 says this. He continued the subject with his disciples. Don't fuss about what's on the table at mealtime, or the clothes in your closet, or if the clothes in your closet are in fashion. There's far more to your inner life than the food you put in your stomach, more to your outer appearance than the clothes you hang on your body. Look at the ravens, free and unfettered, not tied down to a job, description, carefree in the care of God, and you count far more. Has anyone by fussing before the mirror ever gotten taller by even so much as an inch? If fussing can't even do that, why fuss at all? Walk into the fields and look at the wildflowers. They don't fuss with their appearances. But have you ever seen the color and design quite like that? The 10 best dressed men and women in the country look shabby alongside them. If God gives such attention to the wildflowers, most of them never even seen, don't you think he'll attend to you? Take pride in you. Do his best for you. Mm. Yes, and I have kind of um, I have kind of yeah verse 32. This entire section is incredible. What you're referring to is in the message it says steep yourself in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Don't be afraid of missing out. You're my dearest friends. The Father wants to give you the very kingdom itself. That's the passage you're referring to. But looking at kind of the beginning of this and thinking about what's being said here, I love this modern translation yet again, but I think that there's some really interesting things that we need to understand here. Um, I have found myself more and more over the last days and weeks kind of coming to this understanding of that, we use the phrase a lot, bandwidth, right? That are, that we only have so much bandwidth, that we don't have the bandwidth to deal with this, or we don't have the bandwidth to deal with that. But I think sometimes we get to the point of using that phrase when honestly we are probably already way out past the amount of bandwidth that we have. And we have spread ourselves so entirely thin that we literally cannot add another thing, that we can't add another piece, that we don't have more to give. And I don't think that that's the place where we need to be talking about bandwidth. I think we need to be thinking about bandwidth long, long, long before that. I think we need to be thinking about the things that are causing anxiety long before that. I think we need to be focused on our worries and our cares long before that. I think that we need to be thinking about how to minimize the things that we're focused on and the things that we're caring about way before we get to the point where we ever feel like, oh, I don't have any more bandwidth for this. Because the truth is probably you have gotten to a place where you are out of bandwidth long before you even say it out loud. We are bad about that as humans. We are bad about getting to the very end of our rope and then going a little bit further to see just how far we can go. And then eventually, once we are completely fatigued, completely out of gas, completely out of anything else to give, that's when we start actually mentioning out loud, I don't have the bandwidth for this. I don't have the ability to handle that. I find it really fascinating and interesting that this is something that Jesus takes a moment to address with his disciples. Because this truth is has been and always will be the same in the course of humanity. We have historically always been bad about stretching ourselves too thin. We have historically always been bad about worrying about things that don't matter. We have historically always been bad about worrying about things that we cannot control. And Jesus addresses both here. And Jesus is really actually kind of pushing back against legalism and the law, especially by talking about food and clothing, right? Because there were so many laws inside of Levitical law, like the 613 laws that were given. There were so many laws about, what you wear, what you eat, what you drink, how you dress, all of these different things, right? Your appearance. There were so many laws and legalistic things inside of those rules and regulations. And what Jesus is doing is he's doing a twofold thing. Number one, he is taking your anxiety and saying, calm down, like only worry about the things that really matter. And that's what we're really talking about this morning. You only have so many things that you can truly invest yourself in at any one given time. You only have so many things that you can really give yourself to at one given time. Life is a series of problems and solutions. That's all it is. Now, hear me when I tell you this. It is really important to understand that when you solve a certain set of issues in your life, you are just creating more opportunities for solutions. You are not creating solutions. If you are somebody who, let's just take for example, if you are somebody who, struggles paycheck to paycheck and has concerns about your finances, you are no different than Warren Buffett, who is probably the richest person in the world. He also has money concerns. He also has money problems. He also has issues that he has to find solutions for. And just because those solutions or those problems look different, it doesn't mean that those problems don't exist. See, there is nothing in this life that is going to bring you absolution and complete and total solution. Life is a series of problems and solutions, and then more problems and solutions. You have to determine in your day to day what are the problems that deserve your focus. What are the problems and the solutions that you're seeking that deserve your time and your energy? See, the place where we go too far past our bandwidth, the place that we spread ourselves too thin, is where we take on too many problems and we're trying to come up with too many solutions at once, to a point where we just lock ourselves down. And this is a problem that I run into a lot, where I get to a point where I just completely lock up and I can't solve anything at that point. I go from trying to solve everything to being able to solve nothing, because I just get so far out over my skis that it is detrimental to me, and then everything falls. Now, I'm not trying to say that we're not all unique and important. We are. But what I'll say is that our problems are not new. The things that we face are not unheard of. The issues that we're having, probably the same issues that everyone in the world faces in certain ways. Really tough colleagues or coworkers or a boss at work, challenging financial decisions. Again, going back to kind of the example of like living paycheck to paycheck or being the Warren Buffetts of the world, still having financial issues, still having financial concerns, still having financial problems to solve. Those problems just look different. We need to realize that there's, as Solomon would say, there's nothing new under the sun. In other words, there's nothing that has ever kind of come across our plate that hasn't already been dealt with. Keeping good boundaries is paramount. It's easier to change a battery before it gets to 0%. Once it's 0%, it takes much longer to recharge and be effective. That's true. Yeah. I think we all are. And I think that the truth is that there is always going to be problems and issues and things that we're going to have to find solutions for in our life. The question is, what are the things that deserve our focus? And so often we invest our time and our energy into things that, number one, don't matter, and number two, we cannot control. And Jesus, in pushing back against the legalism of the religious culture at the time, addresses both. He says, you're worried about what you wear and what you eat. Because the legalism said, you know, you have to dress a certain way. You have to eat these certain things. Don't eat these certain things. Be about this stuff. Jesus goes, don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about the things, the clothes that hang on your body. Don't worry about the things that you put into it necessarily. Those are things that you really shouldn't bother you deeply. Now, do I think that there are times when you need to, worry about the things that you consume? Sure. Especially if you're on a, health journey. Rick and I were texting back and forth a little bit about this. I think earlier this week or last week, because he and I have both kind of been on a health kick, and um, I'd experienced something kind of in my life that reminded me that was really important. Um, I love how you're dropping quotes for Jesus, like like it's just a dude. That's so good. I love doing that. I love quoting scripture in meetings and things like that at work, and being like, "Hey, I read this quote one time," and I just like I'll put out scripture, but it's like it's not things that are just immediately recognizable. It's not like a John 3:16 or something. You know, it's like when we're talking about people job performance or whatever. Like I read somewhere that a workman is worth his wage. That their effort matters. They're like, oh, that's good leadership. Um, but so I love that, but also very true, right? Um, the quote stands true. Um, but this first portion of the passage in verses 22 through 24, um, and you know what? If he had of, he would have loved it. All right, here's a real question though. If you're getting fast food tacos, is it Taco Bell, Taco Bueno? I don't know if Taco Bueno's nationwide. I feel like probably is somewhat. Taco Bell, Taco Bueno, or Taco Casa. Taco Casa is pretty good. But in this first portion of the passage in 22 through 24, Jesus is talking about things that really shouldn't bother us, things that we concern ourselves with that we really shouldn't spend a whole lot of time worried about. And then he goes on in 25 through 28 and he starts talking about things that we cannot control. I like how Jesus is like, have you ever stood in front of a mirror and complained and then gained an inch? Like, I want to be taller, right? Like, there's probably a lot of men who are, my size. So for those of you keeping score at home, I'm 5'9", which is the average height for a male in the United States. But there's a lot of people who are 6', 6'2", whatever. So you feel short a lot of times. But I can't stand in front of a mirror and demand more inches. Like, it's not a thing that happens, right? It's not an option. Um, we're talking about fast food tacos, Ali. Okay, like we can't, we can get real nuancy real quick, especially in Texas. Okay, and you do have, yes, you have great tacos. Um, but I just you can't, that is something I personally could never change. That's something I can't control. It just is who I am, right? And so I could be worried about it. I could be concerned about it. I can let it consume my time and my thoughts. And, I can always try to wear a pair of cowboy boots with a bigger heel, or I could, put those inserts in my shoes that make me a little bit taller. But like, why am I going to concern myself with things that I cannot control? And that's really what Jesus is getting at here. He's saying, okay, first off, don't worry about the things that don't matter, that really don't make a difference. What you eat day to day and the clothes you put on don't change the way that you interact with God and others and yourself. And your height and your physical appearance don't change the way you interact with God and others and yourself. So, why are you going to concern yourself with things that, number one, don't matter, and number two, you cannot change? And we spend so much bandwidth. We burn up tons and tons and tons of bandwidth on things that we cannot change and things that do not matter. And so we have to find the art of just not caring. We have to allow ourselves to just let some of those things go. And that's really what Jesus is saying here. He's like, look, you're so concerned about this, but like, God created the wildflowers, some of them never seen, and they're better dressed than you. And even in the passage we read last week, right? It was like they live and they die, right? They're just a whisper. So we have to realize that there are things in our world that we must spend our bandwidth on, and we need to narrow down the number of things that we are spending time focused on for our own sanity, for our own anxiety and anxiousness. Because if we are consumed by every little thing and trying to find a solution for every little thing and all this stuff all the time, we are burning up so much of ourselves on things that do not matter and cannot change. So the investments that we make, the solutions that we seek, the challenges we put in front of ourselves, those things should be things that we can make a difference in, that can change, and are valuable and worth our time. It is investing in things that matter. It is investing in things that are affectable. It's investing in problems that you can find solutions for. Moose just messaged in. He said, "The older you get, the better you get at this," and I think that's 100% true. It's probably why Moose is better at it than I am, certainly. But what I would also say is, I think at some point you kind of come to this realization, like, I only have so much, like, the bandwidth concern becomes like with your life in general. Like, I only have so much time. I only have so many years. I only have so many summers and so many Christmases. Like, what am I going to really concern myself with? And so then you're like, you know what? I've got a limited amount of time and a limited amount of opportunities. I'm going to really pour into these ones that I've got. And I'm going to care about the things that matter during this season. And I've found myself maybe just in the last 6 months starting to think about like why am I so obsessed with thoughts and concerns and issues that I won't change? Why am I so obsessed with things that when I look back on, am I really going to be proud that I spent my time on that? Am I really going to be proud that I sought solutions in that? Is that really going to move the needle or change anything? If the answer to those questions is no, then it is not valuable to my time. Like, what are the things that truly matter? Time with my family, right? Time with my friends, investing in relationships. It's not the project at work. It's going to be there whether I get it done or not. And you know what? If you crush it, I have crazy news for you. The shelf life of a good job at your work or your profession is shorter than the shelf life of the milk that you buy. I had a friend the other day that was like, you got to remember, and this was a good reminder. You got to remember, if you were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, they will have your job posted before you are in the ground. No matter who you are, no matter how good you are at what you do. And that is a fantastic reminder to go, we spend a lot of bandwidth. We spend a lot of time worried about those things and spend these extra hours at the office and spend all this time, thinking about it and then coming home. And then as soon as we, get the family in bed, we're back on the laptop and, all of this kind of stuff. And then at some point it's like, wait a minute. Do they care? Because even if I perform at the highest level of this, they'll be like, yeah, that's a good job. And then 2 minutes later, it's just moving on to the next thing. It's so quick to live and die. Invest in things that matter. Invest in things that last. Your relationships, your mental health, your well-being, your happiness, your peace. It takes a lot of faith to let go of anxieties and let God do his job. It's hard to let go of control, but it doesn't take a lot of faith. But it doesn't take a lot of faith to make these things happen. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's great. Yeah, to bend the arc of your life to change it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think that's such a good point. And it also is our obsession with things that don't matter. It's like, well, we want to see what our friends are up to, and we want to see what this creator is making, and we want to, and I know that's maybe rich coming from me, but like, we want to hear this opinion, and we want to see this certain content and whatever. But is that really going to change who I am and what's happening in my world? Is it really going to make a difference? The answer to that question is no. And, you know, are we going to look and be so, just enthralled and like so impressed and so jealous of the things that our friends and our families are doing? And We see all this stuff on social media. All this stuff is fake. It's fake. Have you ever watched people, like, especially like, this current generation, like the, younger millennials, the Gen Z people, like, I was doing a wedding this weekend. Um, I was officiating a wedding, and I was guilty of this too. It wasn't just the people around me, but what I found is like, a lot of times now when I'm doing the weddings, I'm like one of the older people in the room, right? Because it's always like the early 20s, mid 20s crowd. They're, it's their season of like marriages and like all of that, right? And weddings. And venue was beautiful. The place where the wedding happened was absolutely gorgeous. Awesome couple, by the way. Love them very much. Uh, but what's funny about all that is like watching couples who had shown up to the wedding, like taking pictures together on this rooftop. And they'll take 10, 15, 20 different photos, change the angles, change the lighting, change the, whatever, and then get on there and edit a couple of them. And what you're getting on the end result on Instagram or Snap or Facebook or whatever. What you are getting is you are getting the very best of 20 different chances, and you are getting the very best that was just manufactured. And what you are seeing is people's lives manufactured. It's not real. And we become obsessed with it. And why? Because it's not reality. And Jesus is saying this very thing here. He's saying you're very worried about things that just are not in your control. You're very worried about things that just don't matter. You're very worried about being obsessed with things that just don't make a difference. You're very worried about, this manufactured appearance. Like he even mentions, like, look at these well-dressed, the most 10 well-dressed people in the whole country. Like, they don't even look as good as the wildflowers, and the wildflowers didn't even try. Right? So they put their very, very best effort forward, and then flowers in a field could be more impressive. Jesus is like, what are you doing? I think that we need to learn how to minimize the problems that we are addressing, because life is just a series of problems. That is what it is. That is what it is. You can't define it any other way. It is a series of problems that we are seeking to fix. We have to minimize the number of problems that we are seeking solutions for. That's the challenge today. Sometimes I think, I look back at that, the wedding seasons or the marriage seasons of, people's lives. Like, they spend a lot of time dating and finding the right person and investing in that relationship and then going through the marriage process and starting the marriage. That is a series of problems. It's a series of problems of like, I don't want to be alone anymore. I want to build my life with a partner. I want to experience life with someone. That is a valuable problem to find solutions for. That is why marriage is holy, and connection that way is holy, because we are, even from the very beginning of Genesis, Scripture says, it was not good for man to be alone, right? And I think that's true. We are not designed to be alone. We are not designed to do life alone. We are not designed to do life without a partner and without someone alongside us. So we are designed to be in community. We've talked about that a lot here. So with that in mind, do I think the pursuit of finding the right person and spending your life with a person matters? Yes, I do. I think that's very valuable. It is a problem. And I wouldn't say for everyone, because some people are like, you know what, I'm fulfilled with my family relationships and my friends and those kinds of things. And I think that's beautiful too. But for a lot of people, that means finding a partner. That is a problem worth finding a solution for. That is a problem worth spending bandwidth on. That's a problem worth, inheriting other problems, right? So now it's like, I found this person, but now I need to invest time and resources and, emotions and all of those things into that, right? But it is something worth investing in. Your mental health, your emotional well-being. For many of us, I would say all of us, but for a lot of us, it is a constant battle. But it is worth your time. It is worth your effort. It is worth that extra doctor's bill. It is worth buying those prescriptions once a month. It is worth that time. It is worth having other problems to come up with solutions with because it's valuable. It is worth your bandwidth. But we create problems that don't matter. It's kind of like I got toward the end of my personal year at my job, and our vacation time um, rolls over uh, at the end of the year, or at the end of your year, your annual, um, like your work anniversary, right? And I had a bunch of hours like that I hadn't used, and I was like, I just don't have time to do this. I shouldn't, I shouldn't be using my time right now and whatever. And I think finally I had a realization of like, but why? Is there anything here that is so important, that is more important than some extra time with my family, some extra time with people I care about, some extra time away and resetting and recalibrating? Is there anything that's so important here? And the answer that I came up with is no. So I'm going to perform when I'm there, but I'm only going to be there when I need to be. And that is a big shift for me, especially coming out of the ministry world and the servant world, where you constantly feel like you always have to be available, always on, always working. I have to change that mindset. Realize it's not good for me to think like that. I just think it's really important that we figure out the things in our lives that are worth our time and worth our focus, the problems in our lives that are worth seeking solutions for or worth working through, the things in our lives that are worth our bandwidth. And the rest of it, it's just going to be what it is. I'm going to quit stealing. Listen, this is important. I want you to hear this. I'm going to quit stealing my inner peace for every little thing. You hear me? Quit stealing your inner peace for every little thing. We allow ourselves way too often to have our peace stolen by things that just don't matter, by things that can wait. by things that don't make an impact. Quit allowing your peace to be stolen by every little thing, especially when it's things that you cannot control, especially when it's things that do not matter, especially when it's things that are going to happen no matter what. If you can't change it, and it's not going to change, and it's not going to be any different, and it doesn't really make an effect, and it doesn't really affect the things that matter the most to you, then whatever. We've got to quit caring about things that just don't need to be cared about. We will waste our lives. We will waste our lives and kill ourselves over things that just don't matter. I guess what I'm really saying this morning is so many of us are high functioning control freaks. Be honest, it's you. And we want to control every little thing in our lives to make sure everything is perfect and everything is going well and that everything makes sense and that there's not a problem. But guess what? I have news for you today. And this is news for me too. Okay, so I'm preaching to myself here. You will never be able to control it all. You will never be able to fix it all. And there will always be another problem. You will never be able to control it all. You will never be able to fix it all. And there will always be another problem. So instead of being obsessed with trying to get to some place of perfection, I'm sorry, but I just want to be the one to tell you today, it's never going to happen. And I'm not saying don't care. I'm just saying only care about the things that matter. I am a control freak when it comes to my life. I want everything to make sense. I want everything to be in line. I want to find a place of nirvana, right? Like I want everything to be perfect and everything to be just right. And I want, you know, it's like when I'm it's like when I'm planning a vacation for my wife or my family, like I try to have it dialed in almost minute to minute of like we're going to go here and we're going to do this thing and then we're going to eat at this restaurant I found, it's local and it's got great reviews and it's blah blah blah, and I want to have all of those things because I want them to have an amazing time. Well, guess what? I can't control how they're going to feel about any of it. I can't control if maybe the staff at that restaurant is having a bad day and the service is slow. I can't control that. Or maybe the cook called in and the food is just not as good as it usually is. I can't control that. I can't control if there's a little bit longer line to try to get into this certain attraction or this thing, or that, maybe they closed for the day because of some kind of weird unforeseen issue. I can't control any of that. I can't control when the air conditioner, suddenly stops working in the Airbnb. Like I can't control those things. And as much as I want to make sure that everything makes sense and everything goes exactly right and everything is checked out in order, there are just going to be pieces that I cannot control. I can't control, like when I'm with my kids, if one of them has just decided they woke up that morning and everything is going to suck. And they're going to make everybody else's lives suck too because they've just got an attitude. They didn't sleep well, or they're grumpy, or they're frustrated, or they've just decided to cop an attitude about something. Can't control that. But what I can control is my heart and my attitude and just enjoying the experience. I'm reminded of a situation here several months ago. I was taking, and I think I shared this with y'all, but I want to finish with this story because it's a beautiful prime example of this, and it is another way that my oldest daughter continues to teach me lessons as a grown man. Okay, she is 12, and she has been teaching me lessons probably since she was like 6 or 7, maybe even before that, right? Um, I think she was like in pre-K the first time that she like blew my mind, right, with just some knowledge. Um, but here several months ago, um, Lainey Wilson was coming to Oklahoma, and she loves Lainey Wilson. Um, and she auditioned to get into this public target school that focuses on the arts, and she got in, and her audition solo was a Lainey Wilson song, and like, I mean, she loves Lainey Wilson. Wears Lainey Wilson shirts probably 3 out of 5 days a week during the week. Um, so we get in the car. The concert was at a venue that was like 2 hours away, and we get about an hour and a half down the road, and my car dies. And what you need to understand is that this venue was not in a city. It is on the Oklahoma-Texas border at a casino. And they have a big concert venue there, but it is in the middle of nothing. Now, it's a great spot for them because they can get people, an hour up from Dallas and 2 hours from Oklahoma City, and it's a great spot to bring in some really great concerts. It's awesome. But it is in the middle of nothing. So I'm broke down 30 minutes north of this venue. Not getting an Uber, tried to no avail. Ubers ain't coming out there in the middle of the highway, right? In the middle of nothing. Um, you know, it's 7 o'clock at night. Concert's going to start at 8. Trying to get it all figured out. I'm running out of time. 7:15 rolls around. 7:20 rolls around. Can't find anybody to come pick us up. Can't find anybody to tow my car. It's completely busted. Come to find out the fuel injector had gone out. Like, I mean, just all sorts of chaos. Not something you can just fix on the side of the road, right? And my oldest daughter has been so excited and been asking for years to go see a Lainey Wilson concert. And we finally got tickets, and we finally, we're in a spot where I could, fork that money and like do the thing. And we had the time and like all of that. Right. And I'm like, this is falling apart. Completely unforeseen. It's just falling apart. And I felt awful. It's a bad dad moment when you're like, I can't fix this. Right. And I was just like, Reagan, are you okay? Like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, we're broke down literally on the side of Interstate 35, trucks flying by at, 80 miles an hour. Like, I've gotten her out of the car and moved her up against the, like the fence, like as far away from the car as possible because people are crazy and they hit cars on the side of the road all the time. I just was worried about that. And she goes, yeah, Dad, it's fine. She goes, it's an adventure. We're just having a great time. That is such a constant reminder that even the destination and the plan that we set in our brain, it can just be the plan, but it doesn't have to be the journey. It doesn't have to be the adventure. The adventure can just be in the moment. The experience, the fun, the thrill, it can just be in the moment. See, as adults, we're awful about the adventure, and the moment and the experience has to be the thing that we planned. It has to be the thing that we put on the calendar. It has to be the thing. It has to be the place that we're going. It has to be the thing that we paid for. It has to be this thing. It doesn't have to be. It could just be the experience. It could just be the moments. It could just be the laughs that we'll have later about the craziness and the chaos. It could just be that. I remember thinking, she is keeping me calm by just being calm. And why is it that this 12-year-old understands something that I have had a lifetime to learn? That it should just be okay. That we can just appreciate the chaos of this. That we can just look at it not as a problem, but as an adventure, as a moment. Now, long story short, um, a Choctaw light horse police. Now, for those of you who are not from like Oklahoma or like native areas, um, the tribes are um, are sovereign. Um, so they have sovereign territories here in Oklahoma, where they have like their own government and own structure and like all of that stuff. So they also have their own like police department. And a Choctaw light horse police officer pulls in behind us, and he was like, "Oh, young lady, you look like you're headed to the concert. I can get y'all down there." And he was like, "You know, better to go to a concert in a cop car than leave in one." I was like, "It's crazy." Got the car towed, got the car fixed. We made it there on time, lights and sirens. Like it was good. But you know what? That's a moment that we'll never forget. It's a moment we'll remember forever. It's a core memory for her. And because of that, like we didn't have a chance to go eat or do all these other things that we planned. So we find ourselves like, and we were planning on driving back home after the concert, like coming back the 2 hours. The concert was going to end about 10 or 10:30, and I was going to drive us back home. So we ended up like getting an Uber from the casino and going into Texas and getting a hotel there. And then we're like starving to death because we hadn't really had a chance to eat, and they didn't have a lot of food at the venue. And so then we're like, um, he he was like the best human. And there is so much more to that that's crazy. Like he got my phone number from me. He went and made sure like he had a recommendation for like a 24-hour tow service that had like a little like mechanic shop. So he goes back, makes sure the car gets towed. Like he does like all of this different stuff. He's texting me, making sure that we made it somewhere safe after the concert. Like, I mean, this dude was like the best kind of human. um it was awesome. So, uh, there's like, I tell people a lot. There's, and I hate to sound this way, but like, there's police, and then there's like light horse police, and they're just like it's a completely different thing. But, um, but so we end up at this hotel like just over the Texas line. There's like a little taco shop that stays open till like midnight or whatever. So we're eating tacos at 11 o'clock at night. It's a beautiful, beautiful time. We had a great time. But it was just a good reminder that the journey is the thing that matters. It is the thing that we should enjoy. And I think as adults and as humans, we get into such a control mode that it's like it has to be this thing that I planned, that I paid for, that I did, like I've had this planned and da 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 da. And she just reminded me that, what, sometimes the journey is the fun. And sometimes being flexible and allowing that to just be what it is the part that is fun. And yeah, I think this is it, right? Make the plan, anticipate the plan's going to go off the rails, throw the plan out the window and enjoy. Yeah. And I could be very worried. I could be very worried about a lot of things in that moment. Or I could just go, you know what? I can only fix what I can fix right now. And the rest of it is just going to be what it is. Um, I'll finish with this quote. Pat Summitt, the late great women's basketball coach from the University of Tennessee, um, absolute legend. She used to tell her players all the time, "It is what it is, but it will be what you make it. It is what it is, but it'll be what you make it." Um, I think that's a perfect example of this. And so this morning, I would just challenge you that let's only focus on the things that matter. Let's narrow our bandwidth down. Let's pour into the things that we can affect. Let's pour into the things that we can make a change on, that we can make a difference in. Let's learn to not obsess over the little things and over the things that we can't change and over the things that don't matter and all the little stuff and all the little issues. And everybody's got this problem and everybody's got that problem. And, people come in and they have, a myriad of, concerns or whatever. Like, let's just narrow it down. Let's learn when our bandwidth is full, and that is going to be a lot more narrow than what we've done in the past. Only control what you can control. Only solve the problems that can make a change. And just like Jesus says here, don't worry about the things that don't matter, and don't worry about the things you can't control, because God's got it. It's all just stuff. It's all just stuff. And there's something really freeing about just taking all those things and dumping them off and just seeing a pile of that stuff over here and going, I don't have to wear any of that. Not my problem. And just not caring. That is awesome. I would encourage you to take the weight of all that stuff off this week. I would encourage you to set it aside and just look at that pile of stuff that you were so concerned about, so invested in, all the little things, all the knick-knacky stuff, all the tiny stuff that you were like, I have to fix all this. I have to deal with all this. I have to do all this. Set it aside and look at it and go, am I loving God well? Am I loving myself well? Am I loving my neighbor well? Am I investing in those things? Because all the rest of that, it can stay there. All right. That's all I've got for you. I know we went past time. I appreciate your time this morning. Don't forget midweek, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Be a part of one, be a part of both. 6 Central, 7 Eastern. Okay. Rick leads that, does a fantastic job. So, like I said, be there on Tuesday, be there on Wednesday, be there on Tuesday and Wednesday. But come be a part. So, and I will say that this is probably why I've spent more time caring about what happens in this community than I do trying to do a million other things. Trying to run an in-person congregation and trying to make content all the time and trying to, I realized my world was spread way too thin in that space. This is the thing that matters. This is the thing that makes a difference. This is the thing that impacts our lives collectively as a community. And it is why it's the thing that lasts, because it's the thing that deserves our bandwidth, our time. And I'm grateful for your time and for your bandwidth in this space, because it matters together. So, all right. I love you. Love God. Love people passionately. Love yourself passionately. No strings attached. I'll see you next week.